Today I'm joined by Melvyn Lubega. He's the co-founder of GO1. He runs the world's leading corporate training organization and was incubated with Y Combinator. Now, as some of you may know, Y Combinator has incubated companies like Dropbox, big Silicon Valley companies. So we'd like to speak with him today and unpack his journey. So Melvyn, how are you?
No, good, thank you.
I'm all right, man. Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a while, man. It's come a long road from back in the day, campus.
Yeah. And you've come quite a long way.
Nah, man, just trying to keep the head down, but now we're just trying to keep it going forward.
Yeah. So now tell me, Melvyn, for people who don't know out there, what's your background? Like, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so grew up in Joburg actually, so not too far from here. So I guess a Joburg boy through and through, but did my high school here in Johannesburg and then went down to Cape Town and studied business science, actuarial science.
Okay.
And so I guess my academic background is more in actuarial science.
Okay.
But then thereafter worked in management consulting and a bit in investment banking. And then I did my postgraduate studies in the UK in education and technology. And that was the genesis of what our business is today.
Okay. So now you've mentioned that your mom played a very critical role in how you came to be and how your career came to be. So can you just unpack that for us?
Yeah. So in any business you need your seed capital and your investors. I'd say my mother's probably my day one investor. And I think throughout my life, so she's a single parent now, but I think throughout my life, both my parents, particularly my mother, have been my number one supporters and fans. I think something which you forget is my mother's such a strong believer in what I'm able to do, and her belief in my ability spurs me on to do better. And that's even outside of my business endeavors and so on. But really, for my parents and what I learned from them insofar as our business, what we do today, is GO1, our company, focuses on the education space.
Yeah.
And something which I grew up having a strong sense of is the value of education.
Yeah.
And I think of my parents as an example of that, who were particularly studied hard. And so if I compare them to some of their contemporaries or even some of their peers or relatives, they have been able to leave their circumstances from a rural background and to have the opportunities that we have today to be here in Johannesburg and Sandton and to have the opportunities we've had as a family. And so for me, the power of education has not only spoke volumes in my life, but through an example of my parents. So my mother, both as my number one investor, my guide, but also an example of the power of what education can achieve.
Yeah.
Has really been a guide for me throughout the business.
Okay. That's very powerful for a parent to even be your seed investor. Did she literally invest in the business?
She hasn't invested in GO1 as a business.
Okay.
She's invested in me, so probably she's probably one of the last.
So, yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
So with regards to actuarial sciences now, that's a very difficult degree. Noted as one of the most difficult, even more difficult than medicine, some people say. How did that shape your career?
Yeah. So quite interesting. So I've always liked numbers, like maths and quantifying things. And so for me, when I chose actuarial science, what attracted me to it was I found actuarial science was very forward-looking. So some other professions, for example, I don't know, accounting may be a bit backward-looking, whereas I find actuarial science is more forward-looking, forecasting, trying to quantify risk. And so for me, what's really powerful about the actuarial science skill set in the program, even though today I'm not using core actuarial work, and I mean I love numbers, so definitely within the business we are quite numbers focused and numbers driven and quantitative driven.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, I think just having the ability to one, think about risk, to quantify things, and also to try structure problems, I think the degree's been very helpful in that particular way. Okay. So it's more so a way of thinking than the actual content of, let's say, a life table for insurance mortality rates.
Yeah. Sort of like picturing how the future may be and sort of structuring your thinking around that and then understanding the information that comes through.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now tell me, where did you start work?
Yeah. So I guess so interesting enough. So I started work actually in second year. So a few friends of ours actually at UCT began a small investment management company. Because we're doing finance one and we all cared about businesses. So we were very much inspired by Warren Buffett, Alan Gray, Phil Fisher, and various investment methodologies.
Yeah.
And that business went on to do well and make a few investments that are still around today. But in the same vein, after my studies at UCT, I then joined the Boston Consulting Group.
Yes.
So it's a management consulting firm. And so that was quite exciting for me because it was like an entrepreneurial firm, like a startup, but it wasn't. So I was their first associate in Africa.
Oh, wow.
So when I joined, there were a few of us in a Regis office in Sandton there around the table.
Yeah.
And it's interesting there, I guess, being part of something where you can actually grow and build a culture. And I think for me, the exposure there was quite powerful, not only from being part of a global world-class firm and learning from very, very smart people, but also just the kind of problems that we were brought on to solve for our customers. So typically we'd service big organizations, multinationals, really ambitious organizations, typically focusing on the C-suite, CEOs, and at that particular level there. So the problems that we helped them solve really helped inform some of my thinking when it came to what we can do at GO1.
Okay. And obviously the level at which you're solving problems was also informed by what you had studied, if I'm not mistaken, because you're able to then apply that methodology into the workspace or where you're working.
No, definitely. I think often, as any advisor, I think you always will face complex problems. And I find just being able to break down and solve very complex problems, I think that's a very powerful skill set. And I think definitely off the back of my studies, but even more so being in management consulting, honing that, where you don't necessarily need to be an industry expert, but you're able to actually add very unique problem solving to address some really big problems.
Yeah. Okay. So, and how long did you work at Boston Consulting Group?
Yeah, so I was there for just over 2 years, and then thereafter I got a scholarship to the UK, and so I did 2 masters there. So it was initially the first 2 years that I wasn't part of the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously you learned a lot.
I did. I was very fortunate when I was at BCG. I worked in just around 10 countries or so in the 2 years that I was there.
Wow.
Because at that point we were really building out our sub-Saharan Africa business.
Yeah.
So helping lots of our international clients come into Africa, our African clients expand. So really, and I think, being one of the younger people there, and one of the few people who grew up on the continent, you have very CEOs of very large companies asking you, look, Zama, what do you think we should do in Nigeria? These are guys who are making $2 billion plus revenue a year in Nigeria. So these are doing particularly well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to just be able to even add value in those situations. I remember I was like, as a consumer for over, 23 years at that point in time, these are the insights I can glean. But the power of just being able to just add value and help people navigate particular circumstances was quite useful. So definitely a good place I found to learn and almost get a basic on business, on what business actually is, how businesses actually work. I think for me, I always say look, I learned a lot, but it's probably from a low base, high growth, but definitely I felt like it was a good environment to learn and just gain perspective.
Okay. Now we've discussed your company, I want to now go into the process of actually getting the company going. From when you got to Oxford, what was the process? Because I know you got a co-founder. How did you meet your co-founder?
Yeah, so interesting. So in the business, across the helm, there are actually 5 of us. But my main business partner, Andrew Barnes, he was also a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. And so he'd come from a background of web development. So he'd been building websites for some time. So actually, even a few high school friends had built websites for a number of years. And so we were both doing the program in education, learning and technology at Oxford. And so we really were discussing ideas of how we can transform the training space, professional training space, because we all had different experiences. So Andrew's wife is a teacher, and so he came from that particular background, and also in his web development days. And then I came from more the corporate background, where working for clients, you often went through their training when you were onboarding them when you were onboarded as a consultant.
Okay.
And so really, the genesis of GO1 was Andrew then sold his web development business, which he used to have before then, actually when we were doing our masters. Okay. And then his partners in that business, who is high school mates, and myself then came together to start doubling down on what is GO1. Okay. And really at the beginning, for us, it was trying to understand what our clients actually wanted. And so, in the early days, we bootstrapped the business, just trying to get the initial customers on board so we could actually build the product. And so some of our early clients were very important in us building the product because they were able to give us, that important feedback. Yeah. And we said, look, this is almost like a mock of what we want to do. And as we built out the system, we got their feedback. And so that was quite good for us, only because we weren't necessarily building a spaceship and then saying, hey, do you want to go to Sandton City? Almost like working with our clients, our early clients particularly, trying to understand their needs to better build the product so we could actually have something that meets their need as opposed to having something which looks nice and does fancy things but isn't fit for purpose. So when we began, we really we began as almost like a learning management system. So it's almost like think of a learning management system as a bookshelf, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
And so it's just an empty shell where anyone can put their own training content, they can track training, but there's no context, there's no content.
Yeah.
Whereas where we are now in GO1 is we are the library, the books, the bookshelf, we've got everything together. But it really began with almost like a bookshelf. Okay. And so initially our main claim to fame when we won the award for the best new learning platform in the world in 2013, 2014 was around really having a very nice intuitive interface and being one of the first to mobile. Because the reality is, I think there are many learning platforms out there, but they're almost like Microsoft Excel. It's a very powerful tool, but it may not necessarily be the easiest to get the full value out of if you don't know what you're doing. And so we simplified that.
Okay. So now you guys made it at Oxford, and then what happened from there? Like you started bootstrapping the company, you started getting clients on board, and then what happened from there? Where did you move to from there?
Yeah, so big thing for us was we knew that we wanted to be a global business. And we're a technology business, so our key strength is technology, the actual platform itself. And so we knew that we had to have a presence in Silicon Valley. And so for us, that was particularly important given our ambitions, even though none of us had experience or context or networks into that ecosystem. And so for us, that's when we decided to, for a bit of a last minute one, but to apply to Y Combinator, which, as you mentioned, is an accelerator program, which is housed the likes of Dropbox, Airbnb, and a few others. And so for us, we realized it would be an ideal partner to enter the market with and to enter that ecosystem for technology. So we submitted a Q2 very late application for Y Combinator and went through that particular application process. And so in our final year in Oxford, so Andrew and I were actually writing up our dissertations for our master's degree at the same time we were out in Mountain View. So it's almost like
in Silicon
Valley, yes. So literally, so we were probably submitting. So it's crazy. So Y Combinator is essentially a 3-month program, but obviously you're in YC for life effectively. But I remember literally, I think we had demo day on the Thursday and we're submitting our dissertations, must have been on the Monday. And so it was interesting back then, just, you're procrastinating calling clients in between your research. But so for us, it was really important to have a presence in Silicon Valley. And so essentially from there, and because other co-founders in the business were based in Australia, where Andrew's from, we almost then had the bases there. So it was almost like we then almost added the Silicon Valley flag. And really, I'd say after Y Combinator, we really then started to hone on our key value proposition. Because we just realized that there are lots of pain points with companies not knowing what training they need to have, they have problems tracking it. And we found that compliance is a big pain point for businesses, getting it right. And so our beachhead is, I often say, our clients will typically come to us for compliance type training, and that's how they'll initially buy the GO1 system, but they end up staying for everything else that we offer, from the soft skills, professional development, CPD, and everything else around that. So that was our real beachhead after our studies into the US.
So now what do they require at Y Combinator, like throughout your process, throughout the 3-month program? Did they require your business plan? Do they, what is the requirements there? Yeah,
so interesting. So Y Combinator, as I guess even as a community, is really around people who want to disrupt or change like society or the spaces that they're in. And so Y Combinator, interestingly, even as an incubator, is not as prescriptive or hands-on, or I guess like prescriptive really, as you'd expect. So it almost can be as intense as you want to be, but it's up to you to engage yourself and apply yourself so you can get the most value. Because the Y Combinator partners are really titans and captains of industry in the technology space. So these guys have built multi-billion-dollar businesses times over. And so the benefit of Y Combinator, I think for us, was really being able to, one, be very clear on what it is that we want to solve, and realizing that there are many ways in which you may pivot and change over time in doing that, but getting key advice and key turn points in our business and around that. So for us, even I say Y Combinator was a key point for us when we decided to go from a Duro to GO1, because we realized we wanted to be GO1, we wanted .com, we wanted to be a global company, and even so far as just honing our value proposition. So if you can think about Y Combinator, there are very few things that are actually compulsory. And so the Airbnb co-founders, So Y Combinator takes place in Silicon Valley in California on the West Coast, but they were flying to New York every weekend or every week to start getting people to rent their or to lease out their houses. And so Y Combinator is a bit hands-off, but I think what really helps is having that demo day at the end of Y Combinator, which is the combination of the 3-month period. It's almost like an artificial deadline where you're almost able to rally and work as a team to show that traction in that 3-month period. Because typically at demo days where you then get exposure to some of the best and leading investors globally. And so it really allows you to focus as a team and put that milestone in place. And that's what really rated us as a team.
Okay. What I want to figure out now is you got the funding from the investors when you pitched on demo day.
So we got some investors at demo day. Yes, we had some committed before them, but we also got some at demo day.
I want to understand from you now is what are the mental challenges that you go through when starting a company? Because a lot of the time the youth, especially in South Africa, as I know, and I'm presuming also in Africa, there are the resources there to start a company. The resources are there. You just have to look deep enough. But people are always scared to go out and start a company because they fear, I may fail, I may do this, I may do that. What are the mental blocks, the mental challenges in starting a company like GO1?
I think GO1, like any company, that's ambitious and wants to do something big, I think you're right that there are many barriers mentally to doing it. And I think the biggest one is in oneself. And it probably comes down to ego, because no one wants to fail. I mean, I remember coming out of undergrad where if you were saying you're going to entrepreneurship, guys would be like, no, don't struggle. I've got someone in a big bank, we can get you a job, or we can get you a job at a law firm, don't worry. Like, it's almost seen as if by being an entrepreneur at the outset you've somewhat failed already because you couldn't get a corporate job. And I think it's almost just one, knowing that you are trailblazing your own path and not being afraid to take that risk. I think that in building a business, people often think that there are barriers, like I don't have enough money or I don't have enough access. But just the power of being able to get started where you are, especially in technology, people often believe they have to build big systems to gain some traction. But often they're very small ways in testing the key hypotheses of your business, and over time gaining traction, gaining momentum. I mean, you can sign clients technically before you even have a system if you're able to articulate what you want to build before you get there. And so there are many ways in which you can build your business, but the biggest thing is ego of failing, because when you're an entrepreneur you put yourself out there. And so it's also realizing that there's a bigger vision, and even though the day-to-day you'll be grinding, it's not losing scope of the bigger thing that inspires you. I think that's why when starting a business it's so important to, I want to say, don't start alone. Because there'll be a day when you're down and you want your team members, your co-founders to be like, look, we're in it. And just to make sure that you balance each other out. Because I think the journey of building a business is not necessarily a simple one. I think in hindsight we can all look back and be like, it's very rosy. But the reality is there is a bit of grind. But I think the impact you can have, not only in like creating jobs. I mean, I think of us now at GO1, so we employ just over 150 people. And I mean, the early days I was like, look, if things go pear-shaped and go to my mother's house and be like, Mom, I tried, like, I'm back. Whereas now, look, we're actually creating gainful employment for people, just supporting their families. And I think it's just the ability to have impact and bring about real change as an entrepreneur, for me, is significant. I think if you realize that, you may be able to really double down and step things up.
And what's your vision for GO1 in the future?
So for GO1, for us, it's quite simple. We want to be the most used source for professional learning globally. So really focus on professional learning and being the tool that people come to when they start their journey. It's quite interesting. So there's Kleiner Perkins, so one of the early KCBC, one of the early investors in a number of large companies, so Amazon and many others in the Valley. So they release an annual report of like internet trends. And so the one that came out actually last week, they were talking about Amazon. I think they were in the US. They were saying that over, I think it was 60% of people's shopping journeys begin at Amazon. And because Amazon is the point of reference for shopping. So when you think of us and what we want to become, we not only want to be the starting point of someone's training journey for professional learning, but also be that record store of their training history and where they've been in their journey. So for us, we have global ambitions, but it's not about planting flags in countries. It's about making sure that we add significant values in the markets that we're in, so South Africa, Australia, the US, UK, such that we own those markets and we use those as foundations to enter other markets. And so we've been quite fortunate to sign some good partnerships to have those access into some other markets that we aren't necessarily in physically as a business, but it's about making sure we keep adding that value and building onto the platform and adding new content, because the more content we add, the more value we can create for our actual end user.
Okay, and who are the companies who are training with you at the moment? Like, if you can name a few.
Yeah, so it depends on the space. So we really think, as I mentioned, you can think of people like in the compliance vertical, leadership vertical. So they're different verticals.
Yeah.
And so some you will know. So for example, so Skillsoft is a very large corporate trainer as well. We partner with some universities as well, both here and abroad. Okay. We partner also with some of the more compliance-focused trainers. So something which we like to partner with regulators or guys who set the rules for training, because then we can make sure that we are able to help our clients get the right almost recognition for the training that they do. So for example, St. John's Ambulance, which is one of the largest first aid trainers in the world, they're one of our partners and clients. So we're able to offer our clients first aid training and accreditation in many of the countries that we operate in. Okay. So it's really just about key partners as we go along.
Yeah. And which companies are you training at the moment?
Yeah, so I guess companies which you'd know that we work with. So so we work with a number of large organizations globally. Locally, you'd know, for example, Alan Gray, Sanlam, Pernod Ricard. So almost businesses which we found are wanting to change the way they engage their staff, but also want to provide them with a high quality learning experience.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's really about saying, how can we help you, regardless of where you are in the world, have access to the best in class or the best global training content for your staff. Okay. And so we've worked with them.
And have you found that a lot of the companies that have come on board have a revolutionary mindset, sort of thinking about the future, thinking about how to add value to their customers in the future, thereby training their staff right now? Is that the sort of caliber of companies you found coming on board?
No, definitely. I think it almost companies versus the individuals, but definitely different companies at different parts of their learning journeys. And definitely, in South Africa, we're not too far from here, working with some of the big investment banks here, is where they're realizing that the future skills for them to add value is very reliant on how they train their staff. And so it's really refreshing. So I was at an ESCO meeting of a very large bank here which we're working with, and just to see how the leadership at that particular bank is thinking about how they need to equip their staff to make sure that they can actually add value and take a particular, let's say, solutions-based approach to solving problems is very encouraging, because we work with companies in over 20 countries. Yeah. And so it's quite nice for us as we're able to come to organizations and be a trusted advisor and share the best practice from Malaysia, from Australia, from the different countries that we're in, and also cross-pollinate what we learn here, there. So we're able to add that value. And what we are seeing is, like you mentioned, are companies that are willing to say, look, people are our most important asset and we must invest in them. And so really see ourselves as being that partner.
Okay. So what has been your most challenging experience, and how has it shaped your entrepreneurial journey? When I say challenging, I'm talking in any sphere, whether it be career, personal, what is, if you don't mind sharing that?
Yeah, so probably front of mind is most of the things we've gone through in building up the business. And I think it's something we look back on now is finding the right partners. And I think having the right people can make or break a business. I think about all my experiences, whether that's been a prefect or something like that in high school through to even building a business now. Yeah. I'm very fortunate to have good people on my teams. But definitely in the early days of building the business, where you have difficult clients, particularly when someone is very key to your business because they're a very large client or they're very crucial to that point in time of where you are. So I think for me, one of the instances is where there was a client who actually wasn't the right fit for what we were trying to do. And I think it was very telling, because as someone who puts their client first and always wants to strive to make sure we're adding value to our clients, in that particular instance, it was very tricky, because in the end, we actually had to let go of the client, because we realized that our product was not the right fit for them. Yeah. But particularly when your team has spent lots of time trying to make the client happy and to get things right, and then the end to almost let them go, it was the right move for the business. And we've grown strength to strength from that. And I think for us, or for me even, the learning there is, one, don't be afraid to say no. I think often when you're building a business in the early days, you think all money is good money, but there are certain clients you don't want to have. And I think those kind of clients can actually break your business. Not only from a financial perspective, but they even can do so, but from a team morale perspective. Yeah. And I think it's up to you as a leader in the business, and we discovered this, to make sure that we also are custodians of the culture and the people, not only internally, but also how external people influence that.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was a very crucial point because as a team, it was one of those crucial moments where, especially when you're early in your business, people are like, okay, as a team, are we doing the right thing here? Because this is a client that we thought was really perfect for us.
Yeah.
But in the end, it wasn't the case.
It wasn't the case.
And so that was a really impactful learning. And I think we've gone strength to strength. But even in the same vein, I think building out GO1. So we've got offices in 8 countries now, or teams in 8 countries. And really, as we built out the business and brought on new people, it's how do you keep a culture the same? Okay. And I'd say this is so important, even though it's not necessarily something bad that happened to us. It was a very important learning. Because as we started to grow up different teams in different offices or plant them, the reality was how do we make sure we have one culture and one team? And so we as leadership spent lots of time getting that right. And now we have one team, one organization. But particularly as we were growing and scaling, that was a very crucial point in, I think, getting us to where we are today and also for the next few years in the business. Definitely getting that right was key to our journey. And that was almost like a make or break moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you describe your cultural, your corporate culture? Could you describe it?
Yeah. So there are many elements to our culture. I think one is a curious one and a love for learning. So we believe in. So my background is in actuarial science, as you mentioned. I mean, if you asked me 5 years ago, would I be in software, let alone learning? I mean, I would have said no way. I think what's quite interesting is even us as a leadership group and even as a company is that culture of learning. And having a love for learning, and not being, and also being able to admit when you don't know something. And so for us, it's almost like it's creativity in candor, and that's something which you picked up in a book. It's called Creativity Inc. And essentially, it's about the story of Pixar and how they have their creative process. And I think it's the ability to be very frank in our conversation. So you have the ability in an organization. Anyone can raise an idea, raise a point, but you must appreciate that. Anything you put forward will be met with candor and be very frank. It's not about the person, it's about the idea. Yeah. And so the merit of what you bring forward is really a pure meritocracy within the business. Yeah. And I think that culture of knowing that, look, regardless of where I am in the organization, I can contribute and I can add value, and my ideas, my contributions will be assessed in a very objective way. I think it's very powerful because people feel free to put themselves forward and to ask those questions. Yeah. And I think that's really a big culture that we have within GO1.
Okay, what can't you live without?
So I don't know, live without insofar as amenities go. So I think probably can't live without my community and my faith. But those are very important things to me, just because they actually guide what I do on a daily basis. Yeah. See, right now, just before lunch, I'm thinking about food when you say things I can't live without. So I'm a lover of rooibos tea. So it's something which I try to take with me when I travel. So something which I could live without, but something which is very associated with my well-being and happiness. Okay. Yeah.
What defines entrepreneurship for you?
I think the ability to spot an opportunity and take the initiative to solve, not an opportunity, but let's say spot a problem and to take the initiative to solve it in a commercially viable way. Okay. Yeah.
And who is your celeb crush? Oof. Can be international, local, whatever the case.
So, I mean, different levels. I mean, so as an actuary, someone who I have lots of respect for is Adrian Gore and the work he's done at Discovery. Okay. Just because of the innovation he's put forward, but even more so his journey through even when he was actually working prior to Discovery, but even through that, so something which I draw on a lot.
Wait, I said celeb crush.
Yeah, but he's a celebrity. What do you mean? Why must celeb crush be someone on the cover of a magazine?
Okay, fine, fair enough. No, I thought you didn't understand. Okay, fine.
So for me, these are people who are like, because these are icons or figures who I would look up to. Insofar as I'd love to meet and engage with and more deeply. So yeah, so so that would probably be locally. Internationally, there are many guys who I respect and whose work I actively follow. Yeah. And so there are a few guys in the Valley who I would love to. I read their stuff. I'd love to learn more from them. Yeah. May not necessarily be the quintessential description of a celebrity crush. Yeah. But the people who, I guess, the thing about a celebrity is someone who is famous, well known, and someone who I admire. And those are definitely someone like Adrian Gore, Ben Horowitz, who's an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley as well, who has quite a nice book as well. Hard Thing About Hard Things, because very few people are frank about their accounts of what it takes to build a business. Yeah. And I found the way he writes, and particularly in his book. He's very honest and frank. And I think for me, just that level of humility and openness, for me is inspirational.
Okay.
And so that would be probably
I actually need to get that book. What do you say?
the hard thing about hard things. Yeah.
Okay.
And as someone who likes his rap and R&B, each chapter begins with a rap verse because he's a big fan of rap.
Yes, he's a big fan of rap.
So no, it's close to him.
Because even his blogs, he begins with the rap verse. Yeah. Okay. And then, what's your favorite show and why?
Oof. Favorite show and why? I must say I don't watch that much television, to be honest. I used to really enjoy watching Bloomberg, to be honest. Just because it was a nice way to understand what's happening in the market there and then. I found that the insight people gave me was really good.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that. Otherwise, what other shows do I enjoy watching? I mean, what I enjoy these days is understanding how people think. So documentaries I really like. Okay. So there are a few documentaries on Netflix that I've really enjoyed, just understanding particular sectors and how things work.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I just like learning new areas I don't know much about. And so that's what often guides me in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, what's your 10-year plan?
So, a funny thing is, what I've realized is you can set yourself the plan, but you often find that it can always be limiting and you want to make sure you exceed that. But definitely for us, we want to make sure we hit our global ambition within GO1.
Okay.
I think when I think of my life, I don't think GO1 will be the last business I build or work to build. So for me, it's making sure that I am having a strong understanding of what the challenges are that can be solved through technology. Okay. And so for me, definitely it's making sure that I'm continually adding value in that space. I mean, I don't think it'll be over 10 years, but definitely over my professional career, I want to create 100,000 sustainable jobs.
Okay.
And so from that perspective, in 10 years, I want to be closer to doing that.
Okay.
And I think fine with GO1 and some of the business we've done before that, we've got traction towards that. But definitely if I can be tracking towards 100,000 jobs created within my businesses or businesses that I've worked or partnered or built, I think that'd be something we'd be working towards at 10 years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, thanks a lot for coming through, Melvyn.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to catch up. Thank you for the conversation.
Thanks, man.
No.
Sure.